Greetings, and welcome to my channel. I'm the Anunnaki Theorist. Today, I'm going to go ahead and do part 2 of my Tablets of Destiny series, or also known as the Maze. Now, the Maze that I really wanted to get into, I can't. Not in good conscience, because I try to go with facts. Okay, even though a lot of people say, well, the Anunnaki theory alone is not a fact. Well, no, it's not. I mean, we do have, the various texts and everything like that, and that's where we interpret and we come up with the story of the Anunnaki. But this particular idea is something that I think Zecharia Sitchin took liberties on. So this would have been very important if this was truly one of the Maze. But we come over here, and this is the Lost Book of Enki, of course, and it says, from the May formulas of Nibiru's essence, only bit by bit could be attempted. Okay, so what this is this is essentially Enki consulted the Maze in biology and genetics in order to create man. This is what Sitchin states. The problem is, though, is when we actually come to the Maze and we go with the 64 that we know, there's nothing in here. There's nothing about medicine in here. There's nothing about biology, and there's definitely nothing about genetics. Nothing. I mean, it can be argued that Sitchin had access to other sources, but that's a cop-out. The way that I see it is he took liberties with the other Maze that we don't know. We can't, like I said, the text is old, and so a lot of this is lost. He said that the ones that we knew were there, but we couldn't tell what they were, they had to do with medicine and biology and genetics. So, no. So, the next important Maze that we can get into, that we actually have the facts of, is right here. This is the Kingship. Of course, I'm going to come back here to the Lost Book of Enki. And it says, cities of man to establish therein sacred precincts, abodes for the Anunnaki create, kingship as on Nibiru on earth establish, crown and scepter to a chosen man give. Okay, so when we look at the Maze, all these things we see. Okay, so, well, first of all, kingship. Why? Well, it can be interpreted different ways. One way is if we look at an individual known as Galzu. Galzu supposedly came to Anu and Enlil and was sitting there saying that, mankind needs to be left alone. You've done your job. You went ahead and you evolved them. You brought them up to the next stage. Now you need to leave them alone and let them do their own thing. So this would be the reason why we would be given kingship. We'd be given the right to rule ourselves. Another interpretation is that all the cities up to this point are Anunnaki cities. And mankind is in the Anunnaki cities doing the domestic chores, serving the gods. Now, a little bit of a tangent here. A lot of religions say, that you serve God. This is a spiritual serving God. This is a figurative serving God. This isn't literally serving God. Whereas with these, the ancients, they literally served the gods. Physical. Okay. So, anyway, they were in the Anunnaki cities doing this, and they procreated quite often. And so the population grew. It got to the point to where there was just so much humanity in these cities. It was getting to the point where, the gods, they couldn't get any rest. They were constantly bumping into man. Man was constantly asking for things that the gods were, supposed to be obligated to give them, so on and so forth. So, basically, a bunch of them were kind of booted out. It's like, get out. Go do your own thing. So, well, when we get into the first city, it says, then to the black-headed people, a city of their own possess, it was decided. Okay, the black-headed people. This is actually a term that is used for the Sumerians. They were known as the black-headed people. Now, I don't know if that means that it had to do with, because the Sumerians could be said to be, the first Semitic peoples. Arab, basically, olive or tan skin, brown skin, things like that. So, black-headed, because they didn't really have any other hair color. They evolved in the equatorial region, so, they're going to have the melanin in the skin and the dark hair and everything like that for, protection against the sun. Whatever. Okay? We know that the black-headed people are the Sumerians. And it says Kishi. Now, this could be seen as Kish, which we hear about this in the Christian Bible, the land of Kish. Kishi, Scepter City it was called, and Kishi did the kingship of man begin. Therein, in consecrated soil, Anu and Enlil, the heavenly bright object implanted. Now, we don't exactly know what that is. Because whenever we get the idea of kingship, kingship descended from heaven. It was brought down from heaven. And I don't know where Sitchin was going with this. I don't know what sources he had where, you had this heavenly bright object, and it said it was implanted, so it was put in the ground. What is that? Okay. In it, Ninurta, the first king appointed. Mighty man was his royal title. So Ninurta, according to this, now again, I don't know what source Sitchin is using, but Ninurta was the first one to appoint a king. Okay, so who was this king? Well, we can kind of assume that the king, since we're looking at bloodline, and when you get into, even today, when it comes to the succession of any form of kingdom or royalty, it usually goes through the blood, and even when it comes to choosing a queen or choosing a king and the other, they try to stay within family lines. That way they make sure that the blood stays pure. More than likely, the first king was a hybrid. One of their parents was Anunnaki. They were that would have been the royal blood. When we get into the Epic of Gilgamesh, and I've talked about this in the past, in other videos, Gilgamesh was 2/3 God. And he was a king. Now, he was 2/3 God because his mother was the goddess. And his father was human. A little bit of a side note. I know it states that the reason why he was 2/3 God is because, yes, his father was human, but he was deified. Who cares? Just because you are given a identity doesn't mean that your blood changes. Doesn't mean that your essence changes. And this is something that we need to look at in today's society. You can identify as whatever you want to identify as, but it doesn't change your essence. So even being deified, that doesn't change the genetics. No, the reason why he was 2/3 God is because you get mitochondrial DNA from your mother. That's the reason why he was 2/3 God. Whereas if his father would have been the God, quote unquote God, then he would have only been half God. Look at in the Greek pantheon, when you have Hercules, Zeus was his father, but his mother was human, and therefore he was only half God. Okay. All right. So more than likely, it would have been a hybrid. That way, because not only did they want this individual to rule the population of humanity, but they also wanted him to stay connected in some way, shape, or form to the Anunnaki. And this is the reason why, in other cultures, other kingdoms, like Egypt, the pharaoh is usually either the child of a god, or a physical god, somebody, or a reincarnation of a god. Okay, because they have to stay connected to the gods in some way, shape, or form. Okay, so once you've been appointed, once you've been blessed by the god, then you are given those symbols. And for like in Britain, you have what the crown jewels. Okay, these are the symbols that recognizes you. As long as you have these things, they recognize you, even though you have the blessing. But the blessing is intangible. It's not something that you can see. So you had the crown, which that's probably the most important and most well known when it comes to denoting a king. You have the scepter, you have the throne, and then you have the insignia. And the insignia is what would be known as the coat of arms. Especially like in the Middle Ages and things like that, you had your knights and your soldiers and everything, and they would wear their coat of arms, which would basically be a bunch of symbols, pictures, animals, words, things like this, that denoted your family line. And if you were royalty, then those symbols would be of whatever would be classified as royalty. It's like, especially like with animals, you've got your lion, some would have snakes or dragons. These kinds of things denotes royalty. But this was so that mankind could rule itself. And this was kind of the start of the Anunnaki leaving us because they were, whatever reason. And like I said, with Sitchin, he talks about Galzu. They were going to leave us, and we needed to be able to rule ourselves. So we were granted kingship. I'm the Anunnaki theorist. Enjoy.